She could be knocked off early, and now Alyssa's played a very natural move. Instead of playing the move h5, she's prefaced it with knight f4. She's at least just played knight f4, given the opportunity for this trade, and now Crush going into a deep think, realizing there is danger here. Her championship could be in the balance if she doesn't defend well right at this moment. Back to you guys.
Wow, sharp game. I've got the position, Arena's position, up on my board. And of course, it's always tempting to go for those kingside attacks, especially when they appear obvious. I love this knight on d5, and I wasn't so...
You don't like knight f4, no?
Well, it's a natural move. There's nothing wrong with knight f4. But I was thinking to myself, is it possible that I might be able to exploit the c3 square? The only reason that I don't immediately jump into the c3 square is this knight on a4. So even though I don't like doing it, actually parting with the light squared bishop, I think also was very promising from Black's point of view. Look at this nice knight on c3. Your rook on a4 might get into the game if, for example, you played a move like queen d2. I don't say this is the only move, but first of all, you win your pawn back. You could always trade down here, and once you've eliminated this b3 pawn, that b3 pawn is captured, guess what? We've got two connected passed pawns in the center of the board.
I like this position a lot, yeah.
I mean, it looks nice for Black.
Yeah, and then that h5, I didn't like knight f4 so much, even though I'm sure Black still has a really nice game. It feels like we could do better.
Right, and that was what was attracting my eye to this whole bishop c6 complex.
It's amazing how playing on either side of the board is good for Black. That's how nice Black's compensation is. Like h5 ideas or bishop c6 ideas, it all looks pretty sweet for the Black pieces. So we'll keep a close eye on this game, and we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back for more from the U.S. Championships and U.S. Women's. This could be the key round.
Without question.
I'm feeling great to be back here in St. Louis. The U.S. Championship is my favorite event by far. You play consistently strong opposition. There's no free games. It's always a challenge right from day one.
This is my first U.S. Championship. It is my first visit to St. Louis as well, and so far I like it.
Everyone is a grandmaster here, and most people who are playing here have beaten me before, so it's going to be a very tough tournament.
My approach to chess, as cliche as it sounds, is just to play as many good games as possible. I've tried setting goals before, and all it does is pretty much sort of constrict my play.
It's going to be probably one of the last chances for me to win, so I guess my goal is to win.
Coming into this tournament, you're always thinking games preparation, openings, middle game tactics. You want everything to be solid, but I'm still trying to be realistic and just get it one game at a time.
My emphasis in the game is to learn and improve. It's interesting to challenge yourself and play stronger opponents, and that's definitely something you find in the U.S. Championship.
I think it's maybe just the feeling of being back in St. Louis again. It's just a really, really pleasant feeling. The weather is great. You can really feel that it's summer here. It's not like that in New York.
Well, this year, I'm really trying to win the tournament. I've come close many times, so I think this might be the year I actually win the tournament.
Each year I compete in the championships. It's becoming harder and harder to prepare. I just finished with my law school exams 2 days before arriving for the championship.
Of course I will try to win, but I have to be realistic. I didn't play like any serious tournament since last US Championship. I had a break from chess, so I will do my best. I do what I can.
The thing is that this is just one game I play with them, so it doesn't matter that they might be better objectively. It's how we play the one single game, so I want to put all my efforts to do just the best I can.
I really like it because it's really fun playing against new people and I get to make new friends.
My goal this year is to play fighting chess and not have a single regret with any game that I play.
My dad said, he said to play well. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Not just to get lucky, but to try to make some good moves.
welcome back to the 2014 U.S. Championship and U.S. Women's. We've got Irina Krush, defending champion, seems to be on the ropes against Alyssa Melekina.
Yes, and Alyssa has been playing good forceful chess ever since she came with that surprise gambit, the Blumenfeld gambit, dropping a pawn for active piece play, and everybody likes her position. And Irina Krush, under pressure, I can't see the times very well.
37 minutes for Irina Krush and 40 for Alyssa. So considering they still have 21 moves to make time control, not a lot of time, and I think we're going to see that increasingly become a factor. Now we've got some action in another game. Sam Shanklin and Daniel Naroditsky, and Maurice has some news for us on that.
Well, it looks like White went hog wild, crazy, and he's about to get spanked for it because it seems Shanklin is completely lost on the board. He was going to say that he lost his mind because he sacrificed his pawn on b2 earlier in the game. Let's jump back to that moment after bishop to e5. He played the move knight to d5, and after bishop takes on b2, he played g4, a wild move, compromising his king. And after knight back to g7, he attacked the bishop, now bishop f6. And then he played this quiet move, king h1, trying to build his position up before his intended next move, knight e6, f4, tucking his king away in the corner so that he could go crazy. But cool and calm, Daniel Naroditsky dropped back, and after g5, Naroditsky played knight to c5, saying, wait a second, your f4 move has weakened your pawn on e4. What are you going to do about that? Well, charge forward was the answer, but this was not respected by Naroditsky. He played the move knight to e4, and after bishop to d3, this was not optimal. Naroditsky played bishop to f5, and suddenly the center is falling apart and no progress being made for White. There are no simple attacks going. He took on d6, and now Houdini's saying, just capture on d6 with the queen, and look at Black's pieces. They're all fantastic. Every single Black piece is wonderful. He's about to play a rook onto the d file, and all this, plus an extra pawn in the pocket. You know what they say, I have compensation for your pawn? Well, that's what he's got here, and there are no simple moves to play. It's just terrible position for White. There's no progress. You can't even look to find what White should do here. Look at this king. Look at his pawn formation. No question about it. Shanklin is just shaking his head, wondering what to do next. Well, it seems as though he has taken on d6, so it's all up to Naroditsky, who looks really calm right now, to just play queen takes d6. That move, Yaz, it looks over, like over.
Right. Well, in terms of from a positional point of view, definitely Naroditsky doing great. Also, from the king position point of view, Daniel's king much safer. The king on h1 exposed to all kinds of checks. I don't know what the computer valuation is, but I would say at least 1.5 to 2 pawns advantage for Naroditsky in this game, and also even a time edge as well. Not significant at this moment, but just a huge advantage. And Sam was way, way too optimistic. This looks like a case of falling on your own sword.
By the way, yes, I might add a line in this position that is worth noting that is just ugly to look at. I mean, after queen takes d6, Naroditsky could play right now. Rook takes b7, trying to get the pawn back. I don't think so. Knight to c3 is beastly, hitting the queen, hitting the knight, hitting the bishop, and knight takes knight doesn't solve anything because of queen takes, and everybody's hanging. Look at all these pieces under attack. It's like everything is hanging. The whole cluster is under attack, as a matter of fact. Here, Houdini is only giving Black a +6 edge, which means 100% this game is over. Terrible position for White. That means he cannot regain his pawn in this position if Naroditsky just captures back. All the whole structure, the whole bone structure, you know, to me, I think of the pawns as the skeleton. Well, there's no skeleton left. All the bones have just gone, especially the center ones holding up the White position. Black's going to win this game right now if he plays just a couple more moves correct, and you can see in his eyes he's thinking, yeah, I think I got him. I think I got him. Just got to play the right move.
Absolutely. Well, Daniel Naroditsky in his second U.S. Championships, out to a pretty reasonable start. I think he's at 50%, having won one and lost one. And if he could get a win today, that would really lift his chances of being in the podium by the end of the event.
Oh, yes, indeed. I mean,
nice.
Even +1 in this tournament. If Gadakamsky,
great success.
Well, regardless of the result, that's only going to be half a point behind the leader.
Yeah.
I mean, unless Lenderman wins or Akopian wins. But so far, based on their positions and playing the black pieces, that's not so likely. So 4 points might be just half a point behind the pack.
Well, remember what we were saying. If we could get if we didn't have a clear runaway leader that just was winning game after game, but instead you had a close race. Guys like Alexander Onishuk were real threats, and Daniel has been playing very solidly. He's looking very good. Brought back our key game, Gadakamsky against Alex Lenderman, co-leader with Varouj Jacobian. In trouble, Lenderman did not play the Queen C3 moves or anything of that nature. He has just played Rook on F to C8, a double-edged move. He wants to make his counterplay down the C file, but he is dangling this F7 pawn as bait. That's the pawn that White needs to get at Black's king.
Well, he's probably planning on dropping back the queen as a defender now instead. So.
Exactly, but I'm thinking that a little crafty move, this move Rook to D1, preparing that if you drop back with your queen, well, thank you very much. I'm just going to take this pawn, and my knight on D4 does yeoman's work. It not only attacks your rook, it defends the nice C2 square, and the knight is dominant in the middle of the board. So you can't drop back with your queen right away. In the meantime, with the move Rook D1, I'm covering...
Overprotecting it, rather?
Well, I'm protecting...
As one famous chess writer said?
I'm protecting the pawn so that I'm releasing my queen to go after the D4 pawn. Lenderman may just be in one of those positions that even if he plays all the best moves, the defect in his position, these double D pawns, is so great that even with beautiful play, perfect play, he may be unable to save the game. So that would be a huge step for Gadakamsky in his efforts to try to retain his U.S. championship title.
Now, meanwhile, our other big favorite pre-tournament, Alexander Onishuk, having some difficulties against Goreev. We were looking at that position before, and you thought that Onishuk might be close to Busto unless he found a really perfect defensive move. So
right, and
let's go ahead and see how that's going. It doesn't seem like Onishuk is too happy. I mean, maybe it's just the lighting, but he looks extremely red in this.
Yeah, probably is lighting, but this posture of Alex, I've played him a couple of times, and one time I had him dead to straights, and when he gets into that double-fisted fist-to-cheek posture, it's a tell, actually. We'll just put it that simply. When we had left it, lots of questions about Onishuk's position, Rook D4, this knight on B2, misplaced, shattered kingside, giving White a wonderful opportunity to get at Black's king. Let's see what Onishuk did. Bishop C5, Rook G4 with a check.
So he's giving up a lot of tempos, but he perhaps felt that his bishop on A3 was vulnerable. So now he went back to E7.
Right, knight E4. Well, one of the nice things that Onishuk has done in this particular case is by driving the rook to G4, he has given himself a retreat square for his knight. Knight E4, attack the bishop. Bishop dropped back. And now knight came to D6.
So this carries with it a threat of Rook B1 followed by knight takes C8 and rook takes B7, gaining back a pawn with interest.
Right. Again, what Jen is saying is if White ends up playing Rook B1 and capturing that bishop, then this pawn will be vulnerable. So knight D6, but was knight D6? That's a
After knight to d6, Onishuk did play immediately knight to d3.
Right.
And now the move knight takes e5 is in the air as well.
With a well, first of all, the knight on b2 was really in great danger of ending up being rounded up. So knight to d3, bringing the knight back in the game. As you mentioned, the pawn on e5 defends the knight on d6, so knight takes e5 is on black's agenda.
And that's right, and in this particular position, there's no great in-between moves because knight takes f7 is held by the knight on e5. Meanwhile, knight takes e8 allows knight takes f3 with check, and then we would end up netting a pawn, and an important pawn at that.
Okay, so let's get rid of this this threat, pardon me, of knight takes e5 with the move rook d1. I'm supposing the knight just quietly drops back to c5, and now white's got to ask himself, with his bishop on e7, that pawn on h6 isn't as vulnerable. I was hoping from Gariev's point of view that white would generate more threats against black's king, and at the moment he's not doing that. Something wrong here. I was sure that white was going to have more. In this position, after Gariev played rook to...
So you don't like knight d6?
I don't like rook g4. I don't like a lot of things about this position. I'm not so sure about this move rook g4 because, okay, it won a tempo, but somehow it released the momentum. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but rook g4 doesn't feel crispy. I'm going to have to turn this over to Maurice and ask him if Houdini was 100% happy about rook g4. It just doesn't feel crispy to me. Maurice, please.
Well, yeah, actually, it's Houdini's #1 move.
There we go.
Position.
Okay.
So I don't know how crispy your crispy gets,
right.
But it does say that rook g4 is the only move that does not get into a worse position. In fact, slightly worse for white. So it says rook g4 check was correctly played, king to h8, and now it also gives knight e4 as the correct move, bishop to e7, and it also gives knight to d6 as the right move, and knight to d3. So the players certainly did their job analyzing quite deeply to find this position and to play it like a computer. I might add, I just want to jump to another game that was important for us to be looking at. Is this game between Crusher and Melahina. Remember that move, knight f4? The move is Houdini's first choice. But we were talking about other possibilities. And Houdini had other options here as well for black. Knight f4 wasn't the only one. Queen a5 check, as you mentioned, Yaz, is also another interesting move here. And at first it had given it knight f4 its main backing. But now that knight f4 has been played, and I've seen computers do this, I don't know why, maybe a viewer can tell us. After knight f4 landed on the board, even though it was his first choice, bishop takes f4, rook takes f4, Houdini got a chance to sort of inspect this position. And as it's inspecting, it's going, this is not as much as I could have gotten out of this game. And now when I go backwards to this position, it's saying, forget about knight f4. Play something like h5 or queen a5. And that's what it really wants to do here. This knight f4 move was logical, but now the #3 choice is thinking h5 was the right way to play. It's endorsing. Instead, she played the move knight f4, and after this trade, but now she's played a wild move, g5 in the position, staying crazy. This kind of chess is definitely Melahina's style, but I think it might be over the top, Yaz, playing a move like this one, maybe more than the position deserves, but she's going after this pawn. I think she's playing the position mainly after the e-pawn, which shows a fundamental misunderstanding of her advantages. The reality is, the pawn doesn't matter. She's not down a pawn. I mean, in your mind, you think you're down a pawn. No. Factually, she's down a pawn on the board, but it's the compensation that justifies what she's done, and she's playing like she's down a pawn. The great Tigran Petrosian used to say, or said one quote that I've loved ever since reading it. He said, players sometimes sacrifice a pawn and play as though they lost the pawn. So in this case, trying to win the pawn back at all costs and making moves that mathematically win the pawn back, you sacrifice the pawn. Forget about it. It's dead. It's off the board. Play like you sacrificed it. Go for activity, open lines, aggression. She's playing like she really wants that pawn on e5 back to justify her play. And I think that maybe she's overreaching. That's why she put the knight on f4, trading a great knight on d5 for a horrible bishop on g3, and now playing an even more committal move in g5. And I think that Irina is going to be relieved to see this kind of play on the chessboard. Guys?
And Alyssa's been taking her time also. I mean, I think she must have spent about a half hour in her last few moves.
Wow, slowed it down. That quote by Tal reminds me of so many memorable quotes that came out of the Soviet era. One of my all-time favorites was the quote that when Michael Botvinnik sacrificed a pawn, you thought carefully and then accepted it. When Michael Tal accepted the pawn, you accepted it immediately, and then you thought about it. When Tigran Petrosian sacrificed a pawn, you resigned. Your position's busted. Tigran Petrosian sacrificed the exchange. He wasn't big on sacrificing the pawns. There's so many wonderful quotes that came out of that.
That is a good one.
Yeah, I know. Let me just go back to the Gadakamsky game for a moment, because that crafty veteran move, Rook D1, was in fact played by Gada, and it's always nice when you're planning an assault against your opponent's king that you see a move like Queen B6. I don't want to criticize this move and say, oh, this move is awful or anything like that. But I'm just saying that as an attacker, you like to see your opponent's pieces on the other side of the board, and this is an open invitation for Gada to go Queen F4.
Especially since Black was probably preparing to play Rook C2.
Oh, first of all,
the queen out with tempo.
You dodge the threat, as you just mentioned, of Rook. So you step aside from the tempo, and you're again eyeballing this pawn on D4, so you can take a pawn. Very nice, Gada.
Or just knight G5.
But this is the move that's really getting my eye, catching my eye. Is knight G5 and forcing that rook back to F8 and tying up your opponent's pieces so that maybe you can play Rook C1. I really like the way Gada has handled this. This is more or less a dream. Quick check on the clocks, because on my screen the clock...
30 minutes for Gadakamsky and 40 for Lenderman. So I don't think this time will be an issue in this game that much, because they do only have 14 moves till time control, although these moves are going to get quite critical.
Absolutely.
I think that in the women's championship is where we're more likely to see some craziness in that respect, because Irina Kreshina-Melekina only played half the time control.
Right. Now, just one quick criticism of Melekina's move at G7, G5 that she did play. Everything is fine for Black. She's got the two bishops, her rooks are great, her king, very importantly, king position, as we know, is an element in chess, and whenever we're attacking, we love to have a safe king. Having said all of that, there's only one piece in her position that's not working at maximum efficiency, and that's the queen. So Black's queen on D8 is the issue here. And the move Queen F8, Queen F7, Queen G6, or Queen F8, Queen F5, get the queen into the game, please. And this move G7, G5, like you were saying, like what Maurice was saying in Tigran Petrosian, she sacrificed a pawn for an initiative, and now she's playing like she wants her pawn back, desperately. And obviously her idea is to play G5, G4, and go after this pawn on E5, but that should not have been her choice. She should have just activated her queen.
Right, I think it's hard for sometimes tactical players. They're thinking and tactics, trying to regain the material, and sometimes the whole logical part of your brain where you're just like, wow, that knight on D5 is awesome. He like shuts off a little bit. It's harder to access. And then after the game, or a few moves later, you're like, wow, I missed that guy.
Well, yeah, like what happened here? The problem that I see for Melekina is that after a move, for example, like H3, if if Irina plays h3 and black really goes whole hog with h5, first of all, her king position is going to be dreadful after a move like knight e1 to trade this pawn on e5 for this pawn on f5 followed by knight d3. This whole idea of knight e1, knight d3 is really suggestive, and I'm sure Irina was very happy to see the move g5.
Well, instead Irina has played knight e1 immediately.
Not trying to provoke h3. Oops, darn it, I closed the wrong screen. I apologize. She's played knight, okay, she didn't try to, I thought you make h2, h3 luft, you try to provoke your opponent to play h5, but she's played knight e1 immediately. Looks like a very solid move, by the way. You put your knight on d3. That's really nice. Good blockade, attack the rook, defend the pawn. G5 was just wrong. It's a pity because Elisa had played really terrific up to this moment.
And Maurice, what are your thoughts on the developments in Crush Melikina?
Yeah, it's sad. You know, you sacrifice a pawn for an initiative and then you get greedy or scared maybe for the pawn back. There's no question about it that Irina Krush feels great right now, and Houdini justifies that feeling as well, that sentiment that black playing this move g5, exposing the king. Used to be black had a decent pawn structure. The only thing that was comfortable, in fact, about the pawn structure was the fact that there was a pawn on g7. Obviously, black's pieces are a little bit funny, but this bishop with a beautiful diagonal, there was a knight sitting on d5, such a great piece. So unfortunately, Elisa has thought about the position the wrong way, and this knight headed to d3, as Yas said, beautiful place for the piece to be on. And also, on top of it, Elisa had a clock advantage as well, but now she's at a disadvantage by about 5 minutes, more than 5 minutes now, as a matter of fact. So she's really frittered away what she had in this opening. She's going to kick herself for not playing it correctly. We shouldn't be too hard on her, however. Her opponent happens to be a 5-time champion grandmaster, so she not expected to play perfect moves. I'd like to bring your attention to a game we haven't looked at in a while, Ramirez-Friedel. And this game, we saw a crazy piece sacrifice as well. And it's settled down now into 2 knights against a rook. And it looks like 2 knights against a rook and 2 pawns. Well, he can pick this pawn off right now, so it'll be 5 against 6. The computer here likes white. I can understand why, at least right now, this king looks like it's never going to have a permanent home that's safe, no matter where it goes. And these rooks have a straight file to work with, and of course these knights do not impress. The only issue there for Ramirez is that he's used time in this game. He's at 18 minutes and 56 seconds. And one game we did not look at all, I'd like to point out some funky tactics happened in the game between Nemkova and Iswaran. This position had been achieved, and just quickly to point this out, Iswaran, the 13-year-old, played this move, bishop to b3, the reply queen c1, and then this tricky move, bishop to d5. Of course, the knight cannot capture on d5 because there's a nice little fork that could happen in the position there. So knight takes d4, however, now uncovering an attack on the bishop. The youngster played this move and was met by a counter in-between move, knight to e6, forking her rook and queen with a threat to this rook on f1. Iswaran thought queen c8 would not be a problem. Actually, she had the move queen to d6 as well, but they would both have been met by the move Nemkova played, which was knight takes c7, again leaving this rook hanging, but she's hitting a rook and getting out by taking the knight on b6. So Iswaran had to take here, and the game after king takes g2, black has lost a pawn in that complication going back and forth. So right now, Iswaran down a pawn and trying to figure out how to save herself. Looks like the youngster's in trouble in this game. Back to you guys.
Wow, I love those desperado tactics.
Oh,
We've seen them in a couple other games in the championship as well.
As an English player, I'm very familiar with those types of tactics of knight e6 and knight c7 and stuff. And Iswaran needing some experience. I mean, this is her debut U.S. championships, women's. But that was an experience when she went for this whole tactical sequence that Maurice was going through, I'm sure the move knight e6 and knight c7 took her a little bit by surprise.
Calculating, it's definitely the heart of chess. And with that, we're going to be right back. Stay tuned for more for the U.S. Championships in U.S. Women's. welcome back to our coverage of the 2014 U.S. Championship and U.S. Women's Championship. Remember, guys, there is a rest day tomorrow. So as much as you love watching these players duke it out, and Yaz and Maurice and my analysis of the struggles, you are going to have to miss out tomorrow. Let's take a look at our puzzle. So today, we're showing you more Fischer problems. Here we've got Fischer versus Rossolimo, another position from the U.S. Championship. We started showing you these in honor of Fischer's 11-0 score in the U.S. Championship 50 years ago.
Right.
And they were so popular that...
We'll show gem after gem.
That's right. I think we've got a long time with Bobby Fischer. And Maurice Ashley has a solution for you guys.
Well, as you see there, the move bishop takes f5. Yikes. I mean, it's not every day you get to play a move like bishop takes f5, attacking everything. Actually, one move before is the position you see on the board. He started with the move knight takes e6, setting up the killer blow, bishop takes f5. Now, Rossolimo had one little prayer, small one, and he hoped queen to c4 check. Now, white has two ways to handle this check by moving the king, and also another way by moving the bishop back. And maybe he was praying that Fischer would have pulled the bishop back somehow and allowed this discovered check, and after pawn takes, he gets a queen. No, that's not going to happen. After queen c4 check, also king g2 would fall for the same knight fork. Fischer just played king g1 and looked at him and said, really? I mean, look at this lineup along the h3 to c8 diagonal. Totally over, busted, easy crush, and Rossolimo decided, all right, you're right, I've had enough. So another gem by Fischer. Small moves. The guy was all about just winning the way you ought to. He always liked to find the best move, and this he did here in this epic game. Guys?
Now, speaking of Bobby Fischer, we mentioned that he enjoyed playing the King's Indian attack as white. And so let's move on over and see how his King's Indian attack is progressing against Alexander Lenderman, who's been leading the tournament. If he can win this game, it's going to throw everything upside down. And what's going on now?
Well,
a pair of rooks was traded.
I've been riveted to this game of Gada Kamsky versus Alex Lenderman.
They're having trouble tearing us away from that.
Exactly. We got to this position, and we got to this position, and Gada played this nice little crafty rook d1 move, queen settled back, and queen f5, queen g5, making his intentions very clear. I want to come in to queen e7 square and follow it up with knight g5. And by the way, there's a pawn on d4 constantly hanging. Queen b4 was played to protect the square e7. And then Gada played rook d2 and said, okay, I don't want to see any rook coming in to the second rank. Because, by the way, if black could ever win this pawn on a2, then this pawn on a3 would be huge. So Gada covered up a little with the move rook d2.
Now we need to have the check, because if we had played rook c2 instead, then after rook takes c2, rook takes c2, queen d8 check would be devastating.
Right. So again, one of those ready-made checkmates, checkmate to go kind of.
Ready-made checkmate. I like that, because that's a Marcel Duchamp reference.
Really?
Marcel Duchamp, he was the famous one for putting the toilet in the art exhibit. Right. And that was called a ready-made, because it was already a piece of art. All he had to do was sign it.
Oh, really?
So yeah, he also did the bicycle wheel.
Right, yeah,
They're
sure.
all ready-mades.
Ready-made art.
Exactly. And there's actually a chess set of his ready-mades. Now, to people listening now, that might sound ridiculous, but at the time it was really revolutionary, because it's not the kind of thing that art students all over the world were doing. People were like, couldn't even believe that somebody would think that that was art. And so he was really opening people's eyes up conceptually to what art could be.
Wonderful. Lovely.
And tomorrow we're going to play his musical chessboard, which every time you make a move, it releases a note or a tune. Right. Now, in the original match where you played John Cage on the musical chessboard, it was supposed to be extremely boring because they would think for a long time, and it was actually just one note. So very John Cage-like, that you would go to a concert and you'd actually just hear a note every 5 minutes or so.
Oh, really?
Tomorrow, it's not going to be boring, though, I don't think. Tomorrow's going to be a little bit different. And here's particulars, if any of you guys, actually it's sold out, but you can watch online, which is awesome. Isn't that awesome that it's sold out? But you can watch online, and you can also, I think they're going to live stream it on the 3rd floor of the Hall of Fame as well. So the reception starts at 6, and the concert begins at 7. And if you can't attend, you can enjoy the show on live. It's going to be live streamed starting at around 6:55. And Maurice Yasser and I are also going to be involved in this, and we're going to be making music on the chessboard.
Making music.
So check it out. But speaking of making music on the chessboard, how do we get in this conversation? Something about Gadakovsky's great play here and Rook C2.
The ready-made checkmate.
So Queen D8, Knight F8 would lead to Queen F6, and Queen F8 would lead to just Queen takes Knight.
Precisely.
So that's why he had to choose Rook C1 instead of Rook C2, because at least now it comes with the check, and Black has a moment to figure out how to deal with these threats, either by retreating some major piece, basically.
Well, exactly. That's the problem that Black has, is he's got to keep constant watch over the F6 square. You just can't allow White to creep in and deliver the checkmate Queen F6 to G7. Queen D8 check is a big threat at the moment. If Alex were to pull his queen back to defend against Queen D8, well then after Knight takes D4, he's down a pawn, and the play is going to revolve around whether or not White's attack on the queen side, White's attack on the king side is going to come through. So for example, after Knight C5, there are some counter chances going on here, but I still have this impression that Black's in deep trouble. You can play a move like Knight E2, just kicking away the rook. If the rook, where could the rook go? Let's say the rook could go to the B1 square just for a moment. How else can I get in there? D4, not exactly what I wanted. Where can I get?
And so Rook C2 doesn't quite work, because you can always just like take on D3 and everything is just guarded. Even bishop takes D3, Rook C5, Queen C5, and this is. And
you're just in time to stave off the checkmate by attacking the pawn on H6. So Gada's going to win a pawn. I don't think that there's anything that Black can do about that. But I keep looking at these ideas. Oops, excuse me.
After Knight to C5, you mean?
After Knight to C5. I keep, trying to figure out, can I set up mating attacks like this? I want to go check, and I want to go Queen F6, check, and mate. These attacks look very, very dangerous for Black.
And that's why we're keeping such a close eye on this game, because it's kind of like this amazing combination of positional chess with tactical chess, right? So mostly it's a positional squeeze, but then Gada is going to pounce just when it's most devastating, and that's what's so fun about watching this game.
As it unfolds, yeah.
So Maurice actually is going to drag us away from this game. Something about us, we just can't keep our eyes off of it. And Maurice, what have you got for us on Crush Velikina?
I like the crazy positions. You guys just like the solid squeezes. But I think you're going to be entertained by this next variation. Take a look at this. It looks as though in Irina Crush versus Alyssa Melikina, that Crush has made a mistake. After we came in at this position, 91, Crush seemed to have a pretty nice position, even though it's not overwhelming at all by any means. And as a matter of fact, this position seems like it's okay for Black. It's just Black has made a concession that she did not have to make in the position. Here she went and struck on the correct plan of bringing her queen to this side, knight to D3, rook to H4. At least this plan was good before. There are other moves she could have made here, but let's not get into those. In this position, though, her rook going to this strange square, didn't want to back up and get chased around into a bad square, but she got to this square, and the right move here, believe it or not, is G3. Now that's a risky looking move because there's sacrifices on H2 and a queen check coming here. I'll just show you that line pretty quickly that you would have to avoid thinking that maybe, you'd have to navigate. But it turns out that this simple move, bishop to H5, defends the position. There's no danger. This bishop on H5 is solid, and White's just winning. White's up a rook. instead of doing that move, Irina played after this move, rook h4, she decided to play bishop to g4, attacking this pawn first. So now the move bishop to d5 was played. And it turns out that in this position, it's not so easy to continue. The main point now, check this out, is if the move g3, it's possible to sacrifice this exchange on this side and then sacrifice an exchange on the other side. And suddenly the position has blown up because after the move c4, this knight has trouble moving because guess what? This knight's going to take on e5, attack this queen. So where can you put the knight? First of all, it can't go anywhere here because it's hanging. It could go here for the moment, the point being that you can't play pawn takes knight because of that pin. But black just continues with knight takes on e5. So a double exchange sack, one on one side, one on the other, kick the legs out from under the knight, and once the knight moves, now a knight's coming in here, and where do you go? Where can your queen hide? It is no place to hide, as a matter of fact, because there's always going to be some kind of funny disco, or you're losing your knight, disco meaning discovered attack, or you're losing your knight because the pin is no longer on, plus these two connected passed pawns. So it turns out there is some potency in the black position that white has to be careful for. So Irina may have made a small slip by putting her bishop on g4 in take right now, and she is studying the position, trying to figure out what she should do next, and the time is beginning to tick down for both players. Irina with 20 minutes, a 5-minute advantage versus 15-13 for her opponent, but it's become complex now, and Alyssa Melechina is showing that she has fighting spirit and a good understanding of the tactics in these lines. Back to you guys.
So we got discos and rovers and all kinds of things going on, don't we?
And some upcoming time pressure with such a hectic position and fewer than 20 minutes on both sides.
And by the way, that exchange sacrifice, rook takes g4, you know, we saw a possibility for Alyssa to sacrifice on the exchange on f3 earlier and get great comp. I think she should have gone for that. At the moment, though, a very sharp position. Both players have it to play carefully. A key game also in our open section, the co-leader, Varusian Akobian, playing against the young Webster student, Ray Robson. Ray is finally kind of thrown out an attacking move. Here we see in the last position, knight went to g5, bishop dropped back, and now this queen on a1 that has been tucked into the corner went queen b1. And what Ray is trying to do is he's trying to set up all sorts of sacrifices either against the f7 pawn or against the e6 pawn with his bishop. So for example, one possibility is to sacrifice a piece like in this fashion, king going to h8. I'm sure the computer will say black is fine, but you know, the queen coming over from b1 to g6 is the type of thing that Ray is looking to achieve, and getting an attack going against Akobian's king. Again, Akobian, our tournament leader, having defended with the black pieces in a sharp position as well. A position that had been quiet has gotten sharp. 29 minutes for Varusian.
And we've got a result in. Sam Shankland has resigned against Naroditsky.
Wow.
That game is over. Maurice Ashley.
Indeed, a scintillating finish in this game. The youngster showed his stuff here in this position. First of all, he was already up 2 pawns. Well, 1 pawn in this position, but you could count him as 3 or 4 pawns. His pieces are so fantastic. White had no coordination whatsoever. Sam's going to just say he lost his mind this game because after knight to e7, challenging the only only good piece in White's position, knight takes on e7, rook takes on e7, and black's pieces just keep getting better and better. The move queen f3 was played, and after rook to d8, now the knight had to grovel back on the e1 square, but black understood his advantages. He continued to exchange off pieces with bishop to d4 and a trade, and now knight to c2. He might have been in time pressure, I'm not sure, when he played this move, but it certainly didn't help. After queen c5, now rook to b5, and without question, now I'm going to guess the move was played, and it was played. Beautiful finish knight c2, queen c5, rook b5. He found the winning sequence. First, an exchange sacrifice with rook takes. Obviously, your queen is hanging, so rook takes queen just runs into rook takes queen. Let me get that analysis board for you. Rook takes queen just runs into rook takes queen here with a check threat, and your rook is hanging, so that's a meaningless line. So here, after rook takes d3, queen takes d3, now the knight fork, knight check, and after rook takes, no way black wants this guy, although that's probably winning as well, but instead, the nice move, queen c6 check, hitting the queen, and now the game is over because you have check on the king, and if the queen tries to save itself, either on f3 or d5, bishop to e4 check. That's a nasty way to win a chess game. Great win by the young player. Poorly played by white, for sure, but black, Grandmaster Naroditsky showed how you punish this kind of loose play. Back to you guys.
Great victory by the young Danya, and we expect to hear from him soon. He's getting set up for an interview shortly. It's great to see that the first game finished in this round of the championship is a win, and a win for black at that. So this is going to be a bloody round just before the rest day tomorrow.
And with this win, Danya brings himself into +1, I believe, putting him right there in the group of the leaders. Our U.S. junior champion, remember, acquitting himself very nicely in the first, well, it's past the halfway point, but if he keeps up this kind of play, he's going to be a force.
He could be a contender for the U.S. championship this year.
Without question.
Now, in Gana Kamsky's game, he did play for bishop to h3. So we just saw bishop h3 in another game. Now we're seeing it in Kamsky's game as well. So we saw Robson playing bishop h3 as well.
To
kind of
target the e6 pawn.
So both Robson and Kamsky playing similar moves in their games against the leaders.
Right. So I'm trying to guess the concept behind the move bishop h3 because
I'm gambling on bishop takes c6.
Right, because knight takes d4 looks very natural, of course, to win a pawn, but Gana felt that getting his bishop into the attack and eyeballing this pawn on e6, if you could play knight takes d4, knight takes e6, and there is a disco in the position that when this rook on d2 does move, there is queen g, pardon me, queen g5 takes c1 tactic there. So bishop h3
Unless you
is
play rook b2.
Right. Bishop h3 is a small little move that could leave a very big impression. If black doesn't get any activity, white's going to win this pawn on d4 and just bringing his pieces into great squares where he can sacrifice on e6 for a crushing attack.
Well, the big problem here is that, I mean, yes, we didn't take on d4 right away, but how do you propose to defend that pawn? Queen c5 would be the only way, but that queen is busy taking care of business.
Queen d8, protecting against queen d8 check, right? So
exactly. So just actually knight takes d4, you could play anyway after queen c5, right? You want to show that?
Pardon me?
Sorry. At queen c5, yeah.
Queen c5. Well, first of all, it does defend the pawn on d4, but then again, that ready-to-go checkmate, right? It always appears check, and that was what we were talking about. Why that pawn on h6 is so
exactly.
annoying.
So there's no rush to take that pawn on d4.
No.
And in fact, he probably wants to take it at the right moment, so that knight takes e6 is an even more brutal threat.
Exactly.
And we've got Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky with another victory and increasing himself to a plus score at the U.S. Chess Championship. He's with Maurice.
Indeed, Jen, the youngest male in the competition, playing fine chess to this point. Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky, welcome to the show and congratulations on your game. Now, this game, it looked like he was trying to just blow you off the board. This was like caveman chess. Just hack away and see what happens. But you just took what he gave you and rebuffed the attack.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty lucky in that this was still preparation. I actually looked at knight d5 at home. I managed to predict that he was, he was in an aggressive mood. So, yeah, it was.
How'd you do that?
I mean, I looked at e takes d4. I knew that there was about a 95% chance that there would be mainline King's Indian, And knight c2 is a pretty modern, sort of interesting move that's been played recently with great success for white. And actually, knight d5 has been played like 4 or 5 times in Grandmaster games, and I think white has scored a astronomical percentage because black, you know, if you don't know exactly what to do here, it's very easy to lose oneself. But I looked at this pretty in depth, and I felt really comfortable.
Wow. So here you took the pawn, and he played g4. Did you anticipate that, or
yeah,
that's out of line?
G4 is still okay, quote unquote theory. One game, one f4, but that's just too much, giving up the rook. So knight g7. Yeah, rook b1 and bishop f6, and I realize it looks really flimsy for black, but well, okay, Houdini and I did not really, or more like Houdini, did not see a very convincing follow-up for white. And after f4, I think, yeah. So
you actually played king h1.
Oh, king h1, yeah. So f4 is, I believe, the main move. Yeah, rook b1, bishop f6, f4, and then I was going to play knight e6, and it's really complex, but I think black comes out, black easily holds his own against white's attack. You know, it's scary, but I think it's feasible for black.
So he went after you with the idea of f4,
yeah.
And then you played bishop dropping back, and then he went for g5, and then you played this move, the critical test, knight to c5, and it looked like right here, everything went wrong for his position.
Yeah, I mean, he's advanced his pawns. His position is really flimsy. I mean, his center is really weak. And I thought there's no way that this could be sound. And certainly, again, it was pretty scary to face this sort of pawn armada on the king side. But I figured at this point, I was almost sure that I had a clear advantage.
And Houdini agrees with you after e5. You centralize your knight, and then he played bishop d3.
And now, yeah, bishop d3 is another mistake. I mean, bishop f3, he has some chances maybe, but of course, I have a vicious counterattack in the center. Eventually, I think the center will collapse.
It looks like it's collapsing already.
Well, I mean, I was calculating bishop f3 instead of this. Bishop f3.
If you don't mind pressing.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Wait, let me get rid of this for us first. Bishop f3.
Bishop f5. Rook takes b7, and I actually was planning to play knight a5. Perhaps it's a mistake, according to Houdini.
It's its third option here. It looks like you can just take on e5.
Yeah, perhaps I can. I thought d takes e5, knight takes c7 was unclear, but okay, I'm sure it looks really dubious for white.
So that was an alternative for him. Instead, he played the move bishop to d3. And now, after bishop f5, his position
his position crumbles, yeah. Now
really fast, as a matter of fact. He took
queen d6 is important, yeah, because rook takes b7, knight c3, and it's curtains.
We pointed that out in the broadcast. This must have felt really good to have a position like this.
Yeah, it's like everything is defended. I'm just about to launch into a vicious attack, and I could see that, of course, the game's not over till it's over, but I just couldn't even find any way for him to resist.
Well, walk us through the rest. He played rook to b3, defensive move, and you decided to kick the legs out from under this knight.
I think that's an accurate move because you know, I don't have to hurry. The knight's his only pride of the position. You know, if I get rid of the knight, his position is just a jumble of complete total weaknesses. So
indeed, not coordinated were these pieces. The knights did get traded off. He played this move. You brought your last piece into the attack.
Yeah, no hurry. Just want to increase it, and then when I do go into the final invasion, it'll be much stronger.
Indeed, and now he played knight e1. You played bishop d4, again trading off maybe what looks like his last good piece.
Yeah, just positional, and yeah, without the dark squared bishop, it's gets even worse.
Classic chess, indeed. After takes, and now he played knight c2, queen c5. Did your eyes light up when this move rook b5 hit the board?
When I played queen c5, I saw rook b5. Originally, I was worried because after rook takes c3, this line queen takes c3, knight f2 check.
Yes, which is what
originally, yeah, rook takes f2. And originally, I thought I have to go queen takes f2 and I'm winning. And then I saw queen d8 check. And I thought, whoa, let's be careful here. And I was pretty much elated when I found queen c6 check.
Yeah, that's a nice little one to be able to play.
If the king were on g1, it wouldn't have been.
Right, indeed. He did move his king off to that square, didn't he?
It ended up hurting him. So
wow, very nice win. Now you're at +1. Which is an amazing place to be at this stage, considering you lost the game earlier in the competition. How are you feeling about your chances going forward?
I'm feeling great. I think I'll sleep easier today. It's always good to come into a rest day with a nice win on the previous day. Once again, the tournament is only entering the most important stage. Everything can change because the field is so tightly packed and everybody's so strong, and etc. But of course, it feels amazing to win 2 games with black against very decent opponents, and I'll just try to keep it going and keep playing in the same aggressive style.
Well, keep it up. We enjoy watching
Thank
these
you.
kind of games, and we wish you the best in the rest of the tournament.
Thank you.
The youngest in the field, Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky, showing his stuff and his very nice understanding of how to prosecute an attack. Yaz, this is entertaining stuff. Back to you guys.
Oh, it is great stuff. It's a combination of very, very good preparation. Daniel got just the type of position that he had been studying, working on. He knew all of the themes of the position, and everything just played itself.
Let's get right back into Robson Akobian,
Yeah,
because there's
because
actually a pawn sacrifice alert there, isn't there?
Absolutely. I've got
you
it
were
up on
thinking
my
this
screen,
might
but
be a little bit quiet, but
it is.
instead it's blown up, and Black has grabbed a pawn, and White's compensation in the form of 2 bishops.
Well, let's just go back a few moves, because we were pointing out that after this bishop came to h3, there was some opportunity, pardon me, for White to sacrifice on the e6 against the e6 pawn, thanks to the bishop on h3. So Var adroitly defended the pawn on e6 with knight f8, as well as defending the pawn on h7. So, oops, I went too fast. I apologize. We're back here. Also, by the way, with the defensive move knight f8, the bishop on d4 was under attack. Rook came over to d1, h6, knight f3, bishop f3, g f3, queen f3. I think we're up to date on the position.
Yep.
With Ray Robson White to play. He sacrificed a pawn, and it seems to me that his best opportunity of showing compensation is to play the move knight to e5 with the idea of trying to bring the knight to this nice square, knight c6.
And I think he just played that move.
Knight e5. First of all, it's always great to get rid of your opponent's queen with a gain of tempo. So knight e5, picking up a tempo against Black's queen. Now Vara is going to have to make a key decision here. If he just tries to retreat his queen on the diagonal, he's really encouraging now the bishop to come back to g2. Again, I don't think Vara wants to give up control of the c6 square, so he'll have to block with the knight. He's a pawn up, but I do think that this position with that beautiful bishop on g2 does give White some opportunities. For example, here the knight can come back to e3 to get rid of that knight, but there ought to be some. I keep looking at these sacrifices, knight f7, bishop g7. I can't make them work yet.
Yeah, you're trying to get your queen into the game somehow. But the thing was,
right.
the bishop on h3 was also nice,
also
because
nice,
then in
yeah.
some variations there was knight takes f7 coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that knight on f8, hard to get mated when your opponent's got a knight on f8.
Well, that was the great quote of Benton Larsen: stick your knight on an f8 and you never get mated.
And that is what Akobian is channeling now, that, hey, we predicted this game would get interesting despite a slow start, so we were right about one thing.
Right. Well, all the games had, well, not all the games, but certainly the Gadakamsky game also had that slow build-up start, but it looks like some really nice attacking chess being played here in the seventh round.
And one game that is certain to blow up, Crush Melakina, both players, not a lot of time on their clock, and pieces flying.
Wonderful. Let me bring...
Maurice, I think, has something for us in that game.
Wow.
Yeah, that game has blown up officially. It's gone crazy, all right? This position, of course, you see a move like g5, rook on h4, this kind of wild pawn structure, disconnected pieces. Something bad's got to happen. You got to keep control. In this position, Crush played the move f4, and after f4, well, actually, yeah, this was the moment we had it. The move f4 was played, and here Melahina played the move queen h6, hitting the pawn on h2. Can't let this breakthrough happen. And after the move h3, she took on f4, and now preparing to bring her bishop to the g5 square, and there's some complications for White to maneuver. Here she played the move queen to e2, and now bishop to g5 did happen. Actually, the computer likes king to h8 more, keeping this pawn under defense, but this move, now bishop to g5, is on the board. The position's crazy. White has regained the pawn, but it looks like this pawn might drop, but position's not so easy, because if you take this pawn, the move f3 is on tap check out the rook on c1 hanging as this pawn attacks the queen. So the position's crazy. Now Crush has 9 minutes. She had an edge. Remember, a 5-minute edge. Now she's at 9 minutes and 43 seconds. Melahina with 10:44, and they have to make 14, well, we have to back up 2, so it's 15 moves after this move, bishop to g5. 15 more moves to go with only 9 minutes on the clock and an increment of 30 seconds per move. She looks like she has indeed made her move now, and she played bishop back to f3, and in this position, the move that the computer is recommending is c4. Getting wild here. You cannot take with the pawn, obviously, because of bishop takes on f3, and then this knight is hanging to that rook. So guess what? After c4, Houdini is giving the move rook takes on c4, and after this capture, a capture on a8, and who knows what's happening? Probably only the computers. This one is crazy, and we are definitely going to keep our eye on it. Guys?
Wow, thank you for that, Maurice. Very sharp tactical battle. What had been what Irina had wanted to do was keep control over the position, limit the tactics, but she has failed in that attempt to do so.
And we've got some movement in the Kamsky-Lenderman game. So after bishop to h3, rook c3, knight takes d4, and now I'm wondering how Lenderman's going to deal with this direct threat of knight takes e6, picking up a couple of pawns.
I'll come to that, Jen, right away. I just saw one other tactic that I wanted to share, was that in this position, the computers move bishop f3 and c4 and all that wild and crazy stuff. Maurice was mentioning this sacrifice, rook takes a4 in a similar type of position, and the idea was after the rook is recaptured, then you just want to play c5, c4, and have these really powerful connected pass pawns in the center on the c5 and d4 squares. This too is a wild exchange sacrifice. I haven't looked at the tactics deeply. I can just imagine that after bishop takes d5, e takes d5, white, Irina, gets in her pass pawn as well. I don't know what's happening. Shall I go to Gadakamsky?
And while you pull that game up, we've got another result in Ramirez Fidel. Maurice, what happened in that game? It's over.
It's totally incredible what happened in the game, because we thought white had an edge in this position, but black won, and won easily, as a matter of fact. Take a look at this. After this position, we thought that the knights were not very good, and maybe the rooks could double on this file and get an edge. But instead, Ramirez played a suboptimal move. He played the move f4, and after queen to b6, a queen trade was forced, and suddenly the knight, particularly this one, had blockading squares where the rooks would never be able to get in. And from this point, Ramirez needed to realize that he was actually in trouble here, because the rooks have no way in. The move f5 comes to mind, maybe swinging the rook around. Didn't matter though, because after rook f3, knight to c6, rook e4, and now knight to c4, and suddenly the black knights are just entrenched in the position. He's still in the game, but he did not play it well. This knight maneuver going back, the rook showing up on this square, now knight over to g6, g3, and give me a first pawn. He must have been in time pressure here, because he donated, after h4, donated a second pawn in the position, and after h5, what do we say about that knight on f8? You may not get mated. You also can hold the whole position together. Now the rook has nowhere to go, and black's just for choice here. He tried to bring his king in, did Ramirez, but after c5, trading off pawns, there went a pass pawn running down the board, b3, king d2, rook to b7, getting behind the pass pawn, c6 attacking the rook. I don't care. Give me that, and here comes a girl. You queen, I queen. Ramirez played one more move and then looked at the position after he had just made time control and realized that his rook was still ridiculous, that this guy had a queen and a pass pawn still, and a very bad game for Ramirez. As a matter of fact, he's going to be kicking himself as well. Now we've seen two players with white, Shankland and Ramirez, go hog wild in a critical game. That's not how you do it. Meantime, Kamsky is showing how it's done. Don't rush. Just keep driving the car. You'll get there eventually. Not here in these games, but we do have 2 victories by the black pieces. Guys?
Right. Excitement in the round right before the rest day. Black drawing first blood in 2 games. That's absolutely incredible.
Right.
No draws yet either. So Kamsky Lenderman's still thinking, how do I deal with this knight takes e6 threat?
Exactly.
Now, you know, you might need to bolster. You either need to defend the knight on d7 or you need to bolster e6, right? Those are the 2 options.
Right. The last move by Kamsky was finally the d4 pawn has fallen and knight takes e6 followed by bishop takes e6 is what white is planning on. I'm thinking that you got to play knight c5 even if it does give up this f6 square in many variations.
And actually a move has been played.
Okay.
So
the variation I was just looking at was something very funny, like b4, knight takes d4, b5, with ideas like queen e3 trying to take advantage of the pin. I think Gada's very close to winning this one.
And instead, Lenderman has played a move. He's played king to h8.
After knight takes d4, king to h8?
Yes, king to h8 on the board.
Wow.
And now we have to consider the ramifications of sacrificing something on e6. Perhaps knight takes e6 or bishop takes e6. And now it's hard for him to hold everything together. For instance, bishop e6, pawn e6, knight e6, queen g8, queen e7 looks very promising for the white player, doesn't it?
Certainly attractive. So what Jen is saying is bishop takes e6, f takes e6, knight takes e6, picking up a tempo against black's queen. Black has to keep in mind that queen e7, queen d8 are scintillating threats.
So queen e8 would seem to be...
Queen g8 would just walk into
queen
queen
g8,
e7.
queen e7, so queen e8.
Looks box, yeah, as we say, only move. Now there is not the threat to capture the knight right away because I've got this queen d8 check, but the problem White's having is he needs to get his rook into the game to really load up.
Or we could just play like knight g7, e6, e7.
Okay, you want that? That's a nice idea. Just get a.
How often do you see that knight on g7 for the win?
Exactly.
Some pretty interesting play here, and I think that pawn is pretty hard to stop.
But we've got formidable.
We've got another winner, 2 in a row. So this is all about the 2 in a row, right? Varusian made 2 in a row, and now Grandmaster Josh Friedel with his lucky hat. He is with Maurice Ashley.
Indeed, we're with Grandmaster Josh Friedel. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
You got 2 in a row. How does it feel?
Pretty good. I mean, a couple days ago, I wasn't sure whether I could win a game at all, and now all of a sudden it's 2 in a row. So I'm like, all right.
It's getting easy.
Well, let's not push it.
We didn't think that you had a great position coming out of the opening, and all of a sudden you traded queens, and everything was fine.
Yeah, well, it was one of those things where I thought I was in. I hadn't looked at this particular line recently. It's a little bit of a new opening for me, and I hadn't looked at this exact line. So I thought that I was remembering something, and I was calculating, and it was all good. Then all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a moment, something's different, and I was actually worried I was going to lose in like 15 moves or something.
When he sacrificed on g5, if you may please bring that up on the board, move 13.
Move 13.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I mean, he has to take, I think.
Right. Did you calculate queen f3 and the whole
I calculated all of it, and then I remember this knight d8 move. There's a variation that I studied that was very similar to this. So I thought that this was it, but then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, this something's different, and I was really...
So you're talking about after these moves, queen f3. The computer liked king d7 here.
But I thought bishop d5 was very strong then.
Right, but bishop king d7, let me put that on the board. The variation. Bishop to d5. I think knight takes e5 was its choice.
Yeah, I looked at this, but I thought it was pretty terrible. Whereas I thought the knights versus the rook at least had some chances. Different. Yeah. But I was very upset with myself at this point because I thought that, okay, I could just lose. I mean, it was very careless. But after knight d8, maybe bishop takes e6 is inaccurate, which was a little surprising. Because here, I thought that he could... At first, I thought that bishop takes e6 wasn't even playable because of rook b8, but then I realized he just has bishop takes f7. And if knight takes f7, queen c6 check, and all of a sudden I'm just losing by force. So, but after bishop takes e6, f takes e6, I think it's maybe not as clear. But yeah, I mean, it's not surprising that I'm in trouble here. But I think maybe, I'm not sure. At this point, I think it was very tricky, but I thought queen a7 maybe, yeah, I expected rook a d1 and then rook takes d4, and I thought, okay, I mean, maybe I can survive, but it looked kind of sketchy. But queen a7, so rook f8's the only move, I thought. So the trick is that if queen takes c5, rook takes f2, and he can't stop me from checkmating him.
So,
yeah.
I mean, we saw the way the game concluded,
Yeah.
and it was really fine style the way your knights came in.
Yeah.
Your score is now at even?
+1.
+1 even. So you're chasing the leaders right now. How does that feel?
You know, it's an unfamiliar position in this tournament, but hopefully I'll get used to it.
Well, I'm sure you will. You got a rest day to really get used to it before coming back to do battle. Congratulations on your win, and we hope for the best for you in the tournament.
Thank you very much.
Grandmaster Josh Friedel winning 2 in a row and back in the hunt at the U.S. Championships. Back to you guys.
Bravo,
That's right. I think that's a nice pattern. 0, 4 draws, 2 wins. So I think that it suggests another 2 wins.
Yeah,
right?
just keep the ascension going.
You know what? You were absolutely right on Crush Malakina. It's blowing up, and she played your exchange sack. Rook takes a4, c4 on the board.
Well,
Both players with about 5 minutes on their clock. You couldn't ask for more excitement out of this game.
Wow. Let me see that clock again. I know
Irina's thinking now after c4, so deciding what to do with her knight,
right.
or whether to throw in bishop takes d5. Well, actually, that looks impossible because it just takes on d3, right?
Well, it's not so clear.
Yeah, because
too many tactics.
There's a lot going on, right?
Just to go back to this exact moment, again, you look at this formidable force of these pawns on c5 and d4, and you say, well, how can I really improve them? This knight on d3 is a great blockader. This pawn on b3 is in the way. Look, you're giving up a minimal exchange sacrifice, but you're getting these 2 high-flying passed pawns. You're attacking the knight on d3. If the knight has to retreat, I'm not saying it's forced, you may end up wanting to play bishop takes d5. If the knight has to retreat, boy, just looking at it, I'm just thinking
doesn't leave a good
d5,
visual impression?
It really doesn't. After d4, d3, you've got a potential for d3, d2, and if the queen goes to a bad square, I'll just choose a bad square. Knight takes e5, and
Black's crawling all over white, and this is certainly not the position you want to play in time pressure, though. I think you could say that for both players. Maurice, what do you think?
Wow.
This is impossible to play in time pressure. You've got to be like Magnus Carlsen or Hikaru Nakamura to be able to weave your way through all the complications. Or you might want to be Houdini as well. If you're that, then you could do it too, because Houdini is saying in this position that Black is busted. Black's just busted. The right way to play here is to make this guy the only piece on the chessboard, is the pawn. There are a couple of moves. One move that's the most logical to me, it has bishop d5, it's its first choice, but they're very close in this moment to keep the position under wraps. Just play queen b2, donate this knight, don't worry about it. Just take and have this position on the board. The point being that these 3 black pieces are stuck in place. So they're not really going anywhere, but this guy's fast, and you're just gonna run this down the board. So at the simple cost of a knight, if you can just keep the position locked up, maybe you will have a chance. And more than just a chance, this a-pawn is trying to go down the board and make its presence felt. So that's what's happening right now according to Houdini, but a human sitting at a chessboard, forget that. This one is really complicated because when we go back to this position after c4, what you see is your knight's hanging, and pieces are swarming. So let's see whether or not Irina can get out of this position.
Well, it looks like she played knight to b4, and then after d3, we see queen b2 on the board. And now, how does Alyssa continue? That queen on b2 defends now the pawn on e5. So Alyssa played bishop to e7, so now she's trying to creep in with the bishop on the long diagonal, the g1, a7 diagonal, which could lead to some interesting tactics on h3, right? So bishop c5 check, king h1 would lead to the...
You're way ahead of me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
After knight b4, the very human move, knight b4, by the way. I mean,
also a very strong move, according to Houdini. That move, according to Houdini, is winning on the spot as well, which is pretty crazy since it wasn't its first choice, but it's saying that this move is crushing.
Knight b4, d3, another very human move. You got to get your passed pawns pushed.
And now queen b2
Queen
happened.
b2,
Now
sidestepping the threat of and protecting the pawn on e5, so this knight can't get back into the game. And sorry, what was
And
it?
so bishop e7 happened. So she's trying to get that bishop rerouted to a diagonal, and Irina snapped on d5.
With the knight?
Yes.
Yes, knight
And
takes
then
d5.
this is the position on the board.
And now crunching, guys. That's supposed to be horrible now for black. Black is in deep trouble, losing critical pieces, and that's in this line. The attack is gone. The attack's just dead, and the fantastic bishop has disappeared from the board.
So bishop to c5 check occurred, and now it's Irina on move, and we don't think she's
Going to allow king h1, rook takes
well.
h3.
Actually, now the queen is
still on the
yeah.
second, so queen h2.
But anyway, king h2 is probably what you would play.
And this does look crushing. I must say, we have to go back a few moves because I wasn't so sure that this exchange sacrifice was that bad, but I think the follow-up in this position after the move queen b2, I think this follow-up bishop e7 was just wrong. This knight, bishop takes, rook takes, oh boy, it's still not, no, I don't have the piece coordination I need here at all. Maurice is absolutely right. My three pieces on the king side are all kind of muddled up. I can't play queen g7 and knight e5 in the line I wanted to. So let's see what actually has happened. Looks just over for black. I got it right, yay. King h2 has been played, and now these pawns are dropping. Everything's dropping. It looks terrible for Melina.
And that means that Irina will likely go into the lead because Anna Zatanski-Bachanskaite, even though Bachanskaite is not having a good tournament, she seems like she's availing herself quite well against Zatanski. Both of them are in time pressure, but the position is rather simplified if you want to bring it up.
Okay.
In fact, Camilla seems to have far the better of this, playing against a very weak pawn on d4. And now playing a nice little endgame rover. She just played rook to d5.
Rook to d5. I was about to say, from White's point of view, White would like to play moves like d5 and knight c3, pardon me. So rook to d5 was played.
Thinking about playing rook to a5, and it's black who's going for the win here, and White's going to have to actually defend.
Yes, but because the position's so reduced, is it that bad? I suppose it is. It's just simply a very nice position. And what are the times of the players?
The times are very low for both players, 3 minutes and 1 minute. But of course, they've got 12 moves to play, but it is pretty simplified. So I imagine they'll be able to make the time control. So a4 with the idea that rook a5 could then be met by knight to c3.
Clear.
And so Camilla just calmly brings her king into the game. Will this be enough for her to win, or will Anna successfully defend? Well, we've seen her defend a poor position earlier in the tournament against Victoria Ni. So I, too, like her chances to defend, but of course, it's definitely black on top here.
Yeah, but again, there's no material. I mean, it's equal material. If White could just play king f2, e3, and knight c3, all of her troubles are over. She'll have her own passed pawn as well. I suspect we're still closer to the draw than to the win, but Anna will be unhappy, of course, that she'll be half a point behind Irina going into the free day in case of a draw in this game. Still, all three results are possible, but I agree, Camilla is in good shape at the moment.
That's right, and so losing steam a little bit here, Zatanski, with the white pieces. What else do we have going on in the Women's Championship, Maurice?
Well, it looks like the third woman in the championship, the third ranked woman in the championship, Tatev Abrahamian, is steamrolling to a win right now, just quickly as everybody else is in time pressure. In this position against Sabina Feuser, she had managed to get a strong bishop on this diagonal, and she milked that position after king to g8. Not the best move here. She played the move rook to e6 after queen to d7. Now knight h4, trying to get into the position on the h7 square, clearly, but the only choice was something like rook f e8. That would have been worse for her, dropping a pawn, but this way of dropping a pawn is miserable. Knight takes f5, queen to f7, she thought maybe she had a chance here, but she's not really attacking the knight. So queen to e2 was played, and now she's played the move knight to c7, and it looks like a combination tactic somewhere has to be in the position to kind of move we would see in one of the combination books. And how would you do it here? Simply rook takes on g6 is devastating. Clearly, queen takes is not playable because of knight to e7, royally forking the pieces. And the other variation here, pawn takes, also drops to knight e7 check. And you pick your poison how you want to get captured on g6. If the king goes here, there's knight takes with check. If the king goes to h7, there's bishop takes. I mean, it's just miserable. This game should be over any second. Abrahamian surging forward, looking for a full point in this game. And it looks like she just won a piece cleanly after the sacrifice. Or did she sacrifice? I'm not sure. Looking at her board, it looks like she did sacrifice indeed. She played, no, instead she just played knight to e7 check. And after knight takes, rook takes on e7. But isn't this just winning? After queen takes, that looks like a queen takes queen, rook. Oh, whoa, wait a minute. Queen takes, rook e8. There must be a tactic here, Yaz. Help me out. Bishop.
Check.
Oh, maybe you might start with a check on it. At least checking on a2 should work out in the end because you can take the knight and be up a piece minimum. Oh, yeah, that's exactly what the computer is saying. Bishop a2 check works. And after the king moves, then simply queen to b4. And that's the end of that story. So Tatev is going to win this game easily in this position. Guys?
It'll be rook versus queen. And Tatiev surging. Foyser, wonderful start, 2-0, just having a horrible time in these last 4 rounds. Things just haven't gone well. It's like the wheels fall off and she's in a, what did you call it, tilt chess situation?
That's right, people tilt in chess as well.
Exactly.
So Varuj Jacobian, he's surging upwards, and I'm starting to look at his position and think, hey, you know, he's consolidated here.
Well, first of all, he's a pawn up. White has the 2 bishops. There's no knight c6 threat. So for sure, Var, our tournament co-leader, in great shape against Ray Robson, as his king is incredibly safe, just like Fort Knox over there.
A lot. Like you were looking at some lines where you thought that White had
some compensation, knight c6. With the rooks on the boards and stuff like this. Well,
but now it seems like Ray's got to be regretting sacrificing that pawn or you know, losing that pawn in some way or the other.
Well, this seems like a round where White's over optimism. You know, White keeps falling on his sword, and good defense is beating good offense.
Black is okay today.
Yeah, Black is great.
And well, there is one notable exception. We definitely like Kamsky in his game against Lenderman, but there's been some switcheroos in that game. We thought that maybe Kamsky would try to sacrifice to bring home the point. Instead, he's just tried to consolidate his extra pawn, and we've actually seen his pretty knight disappear from the board. That being said, he's up a pawn.
Up a pawn, and
he's holding all the important squares from the rook on c8.
And the real problem is this knight. This knight at the moment really is not helping Black's cause. You swing this knight, it's going to take you a long while to get there. If you swing, if Alex could successfully put his knight on b4, then he's got compensation, most certainly. But in the meanwhile, look at this. White has these nice little creepy crawly moves. The king goes to g2, rook goes to e3, rook steps to f3, and there's a bishop takes e6.
Sort of a slow rover, huh?
Yeah, a slow rover.
It's just a attack f7, right?
And build up and
that's been
concentrate
our point of focus for the whole game, really.
Exactly. So pawn more. Good position, good attacking position, actually, for Gata. He's cruising at the moment.
Although I did think that he might just break through immediately, where it's just like it's going to be a slow grind. Well, you can never be that surprised by the word slow grind and Kamsky, can you?
No.
And Maurice, what do you think about this game?
Well, he took it a bit too far, actually. He had a chance to end the game. Now Houdini's saying he only has a small edge. Well, a little bit more than a small edge. We certainly like White's position here, for all the reasons you pointed out, Yaz. But you would have liked White's position even more if he had sacrificed on e6. because this was crushing. If he had captured, I mean, clearly winning a fat pawn, a critical pawn in the position, and after knight takes, this position, you have to judge that it was winning, but here's the deal. You just back up, and there's nothing to do. The position's just busted. This e6 move is going to win that piece back with no problem, and then the dangers of getting onto this diagonal would start to show. One move we should point out is queen takes on e5, but clearly that doesn't help because of this check. So the pawn is definitely immune, and also knight takes e5 doesn't work because of queen to f6 check, followed by queen g7 mate. So there's actually no defense after knight to f4, which might look like not the move you would play. Your move, Jen, knight g7 looks more natural, although it looks unnatural, but it goes forward with the knight. To go backward with the knight and say, buddy, I got you, there's nothing to do about e6. That's the bottom line. Rook to c8 could be played as a variation, but then e6, and you're just going to give the piece back and be down pawns. And this would be an easy mop-up operation. So Kamsky missed this simple sacrifice that would have led to an easy win, but I'm sure he's confident that his technique will have him win now, especially since he's got 258 to his opponent's 130. They still have to make time control here. So let me see exactly what move number they're on. Looks like they're on move 35. So 5 moves to make, 147 left for Lenderman with 30-second increment. I'm pretty sure they'll make it. We'll see what happens in the next few moves.
That's right. We got a couple of quick moves coming from them. Gadakomsky is retreated with queen to d2.
Right, and then after queen d2.
And Lenderman's going after your plan of rerouting the knight via b8 to b4, perhaps.
Right.
And so he played knight to b8, and Gada quickly responded with b4, perhaps anticipating that plan. And now if knight to c6, he's got, he can play b5 himself, perhaps. So instead,
and the players are playing quickly, by the way. They are moving right along. So.
That's right. After b4, quick rook c4 by Lenderman.
Oh, after b4, rook c4 was played. Pardon me.
Rook c4.
Not knight. Not
no, I was thinking that maybe the point of b4 was that after knight c6, b5.
To play b5, right.
And God actually played b5.
Anyway.
Anyway, exactly, after rook to c4.
Got it. And now Lenderman to play?
Lenderman to play about a minute and a half for 2 moves. Well,
okay.
Actually 3.
38,
39, 40. I can count to 3.
Yay.
Some chess players, forget. They see white's 40th move. They're like, okay, we're good.
No.
Oh, no.
No. You got to make your 40th move.
I think found out about that the hard way one time.
Do you know, I was so cruel to Hikaru. Of course, you're referring to that famous incident in Bilbao where he was playing against a Spanish player, Pons, and Hikaru thought the 40th move had been played. He was black, and he asked the arbiter if we made time control. The arbiter is not allowed to give information to the player, so the arbiter claims that he didn't answer, and Hikaru thought he saw a nod, understood that time control was made, went to the players' lounge and poured himself a glass of orange juice. Came back and he was forfeited, and I think this forfeit cost him 30,000 euros. So what did Yaz do? Yaz asked Hikaru, how did the orange juice taste? This has to be the best tasting orange juice in the entire world because it cost you 30,000 euros,
Hikaru
right?
must really like you if you were saying that to him.
Well, apparently he did. First of all, he did laugh, and he said that unfortunately he'd got that joke as well, like others had asked him.
You weren't the first.
No, I
Knight to
wasn't the
d7.
Has been played?
Knight to d7 has been played. So Lenderman had dreams of putting his knight on b4. Instead, he's settling with the d7 square, which he's kind of been struggling with all game, right?
Yeah, that knight really hasn't found a good home, has it?
Well, at least now it has the opportunity perhaps to come to b6. And we've got Maurice with some thoughts on Crush Melakina. Is Crush wrapping this up?
Not at all. She should have, but because of time pressure, she has changed the nature of the struggle from a clean win to a you better find the right moves situation. It looks really like from right here, she was just in the driver's seat, up a material, chasing the king, queen to c7 check, king f6, and all she had to do right now is just borrow this bishop. I mean borrow until the next game. In other words, I'm going to keep your bishop. But instead of doing that, she played, the board is going ahead of me here. Instead of taking on c5 here, she played queen d8 check with only a minute on her clock, and then bishop e7, queen b6 check, king to g7, and by now she'd already blown it, and she's played the move rook to c1, and it looks like black is winning now. If black plays the move d2, black is winning cold. Let's take a look at this analysis. If Melechina finds this move before time control, there's some tactics going on this line. The move being, like, where do you put this rook? Let's put it on d1. Suddenly knight takes on f3 check, and if bishop takes f3, this beautiful move, rook takes, and suddenly the attack is vicious. What can she do? She's going to lose her bishop. She's going to lose her rook likely. She's under heavy pressure. D2 is winning for black in this moment if she can find it. And it looks like she didn't find it. She played knight takes f3, bishop takes f3 instead, but it's still equal. Rook takes h3 now is just a draw. Rook takes gives advantage to black, as a matter of fact. So Irina Krush has ruined her position and now has to play the right moves in order to stay in the game. She's still on move, is Melechina, needing to play rook h3 right now. Her clock ticking down. She still has to find the move, but she has 2 minutes and 22 seconds on her clock. So look at Irina Krush, though. Must be disgusted at herself that she's allowed this and may have blown a full point, a chance to take a big lead. You can see it on her face looking, where did I go wrong? But still, rook h3 has to be found here. And I don't think Melechina is going to miss this move. Rook h3 sitting on the board, and we're anticipating that it should happen at any moment, and she will at least have an equal position here at the Women's Championships.
Right, so Irina actually got down to 1 second on her clock with the move rook to c1. If she had just stumbled for a second, she would have actually lost this game on time. So she is obviously was really worried. And Alyssa Melechina now, of course, she has to notice that, you know, her opponent may have moved 40, but she hasn't. And,
right.
You know, will she be able to play rook to h3? So I guess we should point out that the difference here is in move order. So what happened was...
She did play rook h3.
And she played rook h3.
So no more win. This win is gone completely, guys.
Wow. What a turnaround.
Now that she's made move 40, she has her time to think about whether or not to go for the perp or to go for more.
Let me bring up
now, what was the big difference in move order here between playing knight takes f3 immediately and playing d2 to start? Because one of the ways that people often mess up their tactics is by screwing up the move order. So Irina played rook to c1, and now d2 immediately is what Maurice is saying was a bone cruncher. Now, the problem is that after knight takes f3, bishop f3, d2 check doesn't transpose because of queen to d4 check. I believe that's the difference.
Slow down. Oh. So knight takes f3. So now d2 just runs into queen d4 check.
Exactly. Whereas before there was a bishop in between.
Right.
So that's why d2 had to be played immediately. So move order, of course, with minutes on both clocks, those types of subtleties are harder to see.
So this was this and only this was the moment to play the move d3, d2.
And so in a way, Irina's lucky that it was move 39 and not 41.
Right.
Because then Alyssa might have seen that and it would have been all tears. We've got another player from the Women's Championship with us, Tatev Abrahamian, off a great win. And it'll also be really exciting to hear what she thinks about this kind of scramble and the Melechina Krush game.
Absolutely.
It's kind of reminiscent of yesterday.
Well,
so Irina Krush, 2 little game move 40 thrillers in a row, right?
Right. Well, it goes to show how time trouble makes a fool of us all.
Indeed, indeed. First of all, let's congratulate Tatev on her win today. It was a sparkling win, not such hard work, at least. You're thankful to win, but what about this crazy position? Have you been in time pressure like this before where anything could happen? Win, lose, or all the variations?
I think most of my games are like that.
Indeed. Well, this is not going to be a win for Irina. Are you surprised by the result here?
I mean, I haven't been following the game. I just saw one moment of the game. I thought Irina was winning, so I don't know what happened. I was in time travel myself, so I can follow other games. What
do you think about this time control with increments? Is it hard to judge if you're in time pressure or not, considering you're going to get back 30 seconds on every move?
I like the increment because I think it makes for better chess. But it feels like you're always in time travel. Maybe it's just me, I have bad time management, but I always feel like I'm in time travel. But I like the security of knowing if I make a couple of fast moves, I'll get my time back. So when I need to think at the critical moments, I know I have the opportunity to do so.
Indeed. Let's jump to your game, which is here. And your opponent seemed to just collapse, like from what looked like a decent position, just fall apart with just a couple of moves, and all of a sudden you had a vicious attack along the B1 H7 diagonal.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I didn't think I had anything. Actually, can I look at something?
Sure, of course.
When she took here, yeah, I was thinking what's the right move here. I was thinking knight c4.
In this position, it's supposed to be equal. By the way, guys, I hope we're not overlooking some drama happening in the Kamsky game. Let me know if we need to jump to that really quickly. But let's just go ahead here.
We made move 40.
They made move 40. Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking knight c4, and I think I might have miscalculated. So if knight c4 takes, knight e7, rook e7.
Hold on. Knight to c4. New variation. And takes here.
So take e7. Take. I was thinking knight d6. Oh, I guess that's wrong. Yeah, I was thinking about this position, but I wasn't sure how to.
There's a slight edge for white after knight to b6.
Yeah, but I wasn't very happy with my d4 pawn.
But the d4 pawn could end up being weak because queen e6 is a simple defense here.
Yeah, so trade everything, take on a8, right? And yeah, I was thinking about
and take here, but then they can just take.
No, I have to take on e6 first.
Oh, sorry, my fault. My fault. Sorry. Bishop takes.
What happened?
Wait, we had a mistake there. Taking now, right?
Right. All right.
And now king moves. And,
yeah, so I didn't.
And now takes. So you didn't like the d pawn here, the weak d pawn. Yeah. It looks like you don't have much according to Houdini as well.
But in the position, I also think I didn't have much because her knights were nice on the dark squares, and my bishop, I mean, kind of looked nice, but I wasn't really doing anything.
So the moment when you queen d7, if you made move 21, you're starting to get a slight edge. Like somehow your bishop switches diagonals.
Yeah.
And now you got some pressure.
But even here, I don't think I should have anything very special. Doesn't look like it, because her knights are so nice. Her knight on d5 is so nice.
Yeah, this was definitely a beautiful piece.
But she let me trade bishop g5. I think she didn't let me, because she let me trade my bad bishop. I have the good bishop now.
Right, in two more moves, suddenly you have coordinated all your pieces. Then you made this nice move to trade her, chase her knight, but it looks like she could have even taken on h3 now with check.
But I like that position because now my bishop's really open and her d knight is gone.
Oh, I see.
So I thought that was good.
So she dropped back, and now the pressure just looked like it got to her in this position. You were able to attack and get this move off.
Yeah, so here I think she has to go rook e8. Actually, there's a variation. If rook e8, we trade everything, queen e1, king g2, there's knight e3, but I go king f3.
Okay, that was a little too fast. I followed you, but I'm sure our audience didn't. So rook e8. And
trade everything.
Trade.
Knight g6. Take.
And queen takes?
Yeah, so it's just queen e1, king g2, knight e3. So, but I think I have king f3 and I'm okay.
So the point is, if captures, then there's a perpetual check. The queen will just chase the king forever. But after king f3...
Yeah, there's no knight d1 because bishop a2. So the knight goes back and I'm up a pawn.
And the knight goes back, you just move your bishop somewhere. You don't even have to move it. You could move anything.
I move the queen, yeah.
So you were better in the position anyway?
Yeah, I mean, after knight h4, I think I'm better. Like rook e6 and everything.
So you're, right now, you were a point behind the leaders?
Yeah.
So with a win, you've tied the leaders, and they're trying to make sure that they draw well, at least draw, because both of them are in trouble, to just to stay ahead of you. So what's the remaining fields for you? You've already played both of them, haven't you?
Yeah.
So it seems like you're in a good position, especially since they both have to play each other at some point as well. What are your thoughts about the 3 rounds remaining?
Well, I have 2 blocks in the 3 games, and I don't know. I don't think anyone's playing badly, so I don't think I'm gonna have any easy games. I guess they have harder opponents because they have to play each other. But I played all the top players, so I have Victoria, Ashrita, and I think Camila left. So
3 of the lower-rated players in the competition puts you in a good place to play the next 3 games.
I mean, I don't want to think about it in those terms. I mean, like Elisa, okay, she's one of the bottom players, right? And she's doing well against Irina, so you can just say.
So you're not going to fall for my bait, basically.
Exactly.
All right, well, congratulations on your win. We wish you the best in the rest of the tournament.
Thank you.
Tatev Abrahamian, after a scintillating win, it looks to me like she's in a very good position in the championships. Back to you guys.
That's right, Maurice. And, you know, it is pretty rare that you get a player to admit that their remaining opponents are weak. You know, I remember one rare exception, which was actually like hilarious, was in one of the early championships here. Nakamura, we had a quad at the end, so it was him and it was Onoshok, Kamsky, him, and Yuri. So Yuri was a little bit lower rated than the other players, but he was playing fantastic chess. And we asked them all about the lineup. They're like, just one game at a time, one game at a time. Every game's going to be tough. Everybody's an amazing player.
Right.
And Nakamura's just like, Yuri's the weak point. and then Yuri won a beautiful game against him. Stunning.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So
oh boy.
it was really.
Never inspire your opponents by.
But at the same time, it was fun for us that he actually gave us an opinion. You know, like, it's okay. You know, it's it was like I think people know that it's not really serious. It's a post-game interview. It doesn't mean that he hates Yuri or something like that.
Of course not. No, but I always liked. It wasn't to everybody's style. Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, he was wonderful at trash talking, if you will, but he also followed it up, right? I mean, he would trash talk as I'm gonna, you know, you're going down in 8, you know, and stuff like that.
Well, Nakamura and Carlsen got some trash talking going on as well.
Exactly. It's good for the game. I'm still looking at the game of Arena and I just wanted to show our audience what we've been looking at over here is if Arena, obviously Arena cannot capture with a king. Let's start with that because of our favorite checkmate. Puck. That's clear. And if Arena dropped back with her king, well, she's losing her bishop thanks to the pin of the pawn. Oops, can't do that one. So we've been looking at capturing the rook with the pawn. Queen comes down with a check. And in this case, Alyssa has a perpetual check, obviously in the position, but after king h2, does Alyssa have more than a perpetual check?
That's the question, and that'll also depend on whether Irina has a perpetual check or just a, you know, the problem is like we would like to play bishop h4 and get our bishop into the attack, but then we're also opening up our own king line with rook to c7 check.
Exactly.
So
the black's king is vulnerable as well. So king h2, and this is the perpetual check that she could do, is just going back and forth. But also, I've been looking at a line that goes like d2, rook g1, and oopsie daisy, there's this. But hold on, there's some tactics here still. For example, queen, right? You see, this was a nice one. And you can't take this queen because I'll go check and take your rook. However, after d2, I'm looking at this move queen d4 check, right? To be able to take with the, what should I do? Move the king or to take like this? And
well, what about earlier though?
Sure.
Queen takes h3.
Okay, so from almost from the start,
h2,
right?
Yeah, queen g3 check.
King back, queen takes h3. So now I'm going to get on my high horse and try to.
Now what's happening after queen to e3 check?
Queen e3 check. Okay. Well, I have to trade, and I better bring my rook. Ooh, just a second. You could play d2, and
then after rook d7, e2. You know what they say about the 2 pawns on the 6th rank?
Right, they're worth a rook. 2 pawns on the 7th rank worth a queen, right?
At least.
Okay.
So some interesting variations here going on in Crush Malakina, and I think Crush was thinking actually, even though it's a forced move, right?
Right.
Or maybe we'll keep a close eye on that. But meanwhile, we have the other Irina in the tournament, Irina Zenyuk, and she's coming off a win. And she's going to talk to Maurice Ashley about her game and the tournament itself.
Indeed, Jen, we are with Irina Zenyuk. First of all, congratulations on your win.
Thank you.
Must feel great to win, but Irina Crush is one of your best friends. So it can't be great watching her suffer this position, especially since she was winning before.
Right, I'm totally rooting for Irina and hoping like if I'm not gonna win this championship, I hope she's gonna be the champion.
She wins all the time,
know
though.
she
It's not
does.
even right. Somebody else should get a chance. Well,
She's
I know
so good, though, yeah.
she is a great friend of yours. We didn't get a chance to look at your game, quite honestly. There were so many games going crazy. In fact, so many bad games, in fact. I mean, when I say bad, I actually mean good because White played so crazy in a couple of the games, they just lost easily to the black pieces. You might have gotten in some trouble here with this knight sitting on b3, but it looks like she didn't know how to handle it properly.
Exactly. She correctly put her knight on b3, and my main strategic idea in this position is to play b4. And with knight on d4, I want to undermine it and potentially play b4, b5, creating a pass pawn. So knight b3, she prevented all of this. And in this position, I was already questioning what am I gonna do next. So possibly I can play knight b5, for example. So her knight hangs and she will take. I will take on b3. But that position, she has a lot of counterplay there. It's equal.
And in fact, your queen seems like it's on the wrong side of this knight on b3 as well.
Yeah, my queen doesn't feel too great there. And well, I looked at possible ways for her to trap my queen, but I couldn't find any. So I was like, okay, queen sits there, let it be there. And I always have knight b5. But here
she played knight d4.
She made a mistake. Yes, this is no way she should allow me to push for b4. And here b4 right away doesn't quite work because she can take and then take on c4. The c4 pawn hangs. So I thought, okay, so I'll play bishop f1 here, and I thought again she can play, I think, knight
the
b3.
knight back to b3.
But since she took the knight away from b3, I thought psychologically she's not gonna put it back. So a little mind game there.
She instead offered you a queen trade,
which is already gives me big plus after b4.
You got b4 in. Wow.
And after b5, the position is crushing. And
so
I
here
think
she doubled
this
in b5.
This is already well, taking b5 was another mistake. This is just gives me a pass pawn, very easy position to play.
Pawns, in fact.
Exactly, very easy position to play, very comfortable. I have her bishop on g7 is out of play. Her knight on d4 is beautifully placed, but it's more like a spectator. I have my two bishops supporting the two pass pawns. This position is a dream position.
And your bishop, which was bad on this square, suddenly woke up and has this great square. And
right.
Wow,
she
really
did manage to create some fireworks in that.
Oh, did she? Let's move forward. Let's fast forward.
It was a little bit.
Whoa! Knight f5. She tried.
Exactly. So this is desperado, but it was a time scramble already. We had each left about 3 minutes here, and I had to go for this crazy line. Let's scroll forward and
knight d5 attacking her rook. Of course, you couldn't have taken her knight because of the pin on your king.
So
now she's got two knights connected in your position.
Right.
But often these knights don't make any sense.
Right. Yes. But she had some pretty intense ideas. So bishop d3. So now I just want to win second knight. And here she sacrificed correctly the pawn. d5. I took with the pawn. Queen f6. Now targeting my king. Suddenly, I thought I'm still winning here, but it was very stressful.
Scary moment.
Scary
to
moment,
be sure.
exactly.
But instead, you just took anyway.
Took the knight.
And after check, you just moved your king over.
And then she has to check on e2, and then here knight c3, and I have the only move knight e1, king e1, because queen h1 is a checkmate. And here we had like about a minute left each, and and I was questioning whether I'm gonna get checkmate in this position, whether I overlooked something. But after king e1, it seems like her attack
petered out.
Yeah.
She played e4.
Surely
just
that was
consolidated.
Right.
And
surely that was
really
the best attempt. I mean, I could have blundered something. It's a purely practical chance, and she used it correctly. So it was interesting.
Yeah, but now you're just up a rook.
Up a rook, yes. Well, she did took one of the rooks, but that was over up a piece and up a two pawns. That's
too much to bear.
That's definitely.
Well, good win, fighting win.
Thanks.
Time pressure. Everybody's getting in time pressure.
Exactly.
You know, I say this increment. Do you like increments? Or do you find yourself getting in time pressure because of them?
Well, I think this is the first game I got into time pressure, because this is the first game I tried to win really hard, I think. But honestly, I do like increments. I know you Maurice, and some other players think that we should switch to delay, which is okay now as an option, but then the time scrambles that we will see with delay, it would be just
It's kind of funny because I remember back in the old days that we didn't have either increments or delays, and we did have time scrambles, of course, but we never really, I never really worried about this problem. It all just seemed like it was part of the game, and we played, and we got to move 40, and it was just chess. It seems like when delay came, or increments and delays came, people thought, whoa, the old days must have been awful. Remember, Yaz? It's like we didn't know how to manage our time in the old days. We always got in time pressure. It wasn't like that. We just managed our time properly. I think the time pressure addicts, though, love delays.
Right.
I mean, love increments. Like,
exactly.
oh, I don't have to face that anymore. And yet they still get into trouble. Look at Ray Robson. It doesn't help them at all.
Definitely benefits those people who get into time trouble regularly. And they get a benefit out of it because they no longer can lose on time, basically. 30 seconds is enough.
Right, as long as they
people who manage time well, of course, a delay for them would be better, I think, because then you have more advantage against the other players, right? Those who get into time trouble, right?
Right, absolutely. It was part of the game, the clock, but we'll see how things move slowly in the chess world. Well, congratulations on a win on your before your off day. I'm sure you'll sleep well tonight.
I hope so.
Good luck in the rest of the championships. Irina Zenyuk, after a dominant win, she's feeling good now. Back to you guys.
And that brings her to 3.5, which is a pretty good position, just a point behind the leaders if Zatansky or Krush manages to draw their game. So let's take a look at Irina's position after King to G1.
I'll bring that game of Irina, and the two ladies, boy, they are intense, aren't they?
Oh yeah,
Boy, and the time control, pardon me, has been already reached, but neither of them has really taken a break from the board. They were really studying the position.
30 minutes is going to go by fast. So what's the deal here after Queen to E3 check? What's that?
Well,
how's this pawning game looking?
I'm trying to figure it out as well. Well, after Queen E3 check, it's a bizarre position. Queen takes E3, what else, right? F takes E3. Now, clearly, Black has just one goal in mind, just push the pawns and make a queen. The problem I see it is that if King F1, trying to cozy up to the E1 promotion square, I don't think you should play check right away, because there is a line of play where I think you get the wrong queen, the wrong bishop. Pardon me. Like this line is all wrong for Black. Black is not winning this, because if you took all of these pawns off the board, White can just make a draw by bringing his king to the H1 square. But here's the one that is flummoxing me, is this move for the moment. Bishop H4. Oh, darn it. Sometimes I'm such an idiot. I just play Rook E1. And I make a draw.
That's not that idiotic, Yaz. That's a pretty good move to see. Not everybody sees moves like Rook E1, and when they miss it, call themselves idiots. That's a fine move, only move it looks like in this position. Although maybe Rook B2, Rook B2 seems like it worked as well.
Well, the Rook is
the Rook
C1, right?
So Rook B2 would not work in this position. Rook to
it'd be
E1
illegal.
is definitely
Well, you have a chess piece that moves that way.
A star move.
Right.
So yeah. That's a good move to miss.
I mean, these incredibly frightening-looking pawns on D3 and E3, White's king is just in time. You can't play D2 is just a dream, but the problem is that after the rook moves, the king will come and blockade, and that will be all she wrote. So I think the move King F1 is saving Irina, because she can follow it up with the move Rook E1 and be prepared to sacrifice her rook for the two pass black pawns and get the bishop and wrong color rook pawn.
And when Irina took a deep think, maybe she was looking at some of these variations, making sure that she had some hope.
Well, exactly, because she just really went through a shock turnaround in this game. She was cruising to victory, time trouble, blunders, and suddenly, bang, at the end of the time control, this move, rook takes H3. If you didn't see that move before, it must have been a real shock to Irina's system, because now she had to recalibrate and saying, instead of saying, oh, I've got this game in the bag, I'm winning, Oh, please don't tell me I'm lost.
That's right. So we'll keep an eye on that and see whether Alyssa in a deep thought about whether to play Queen E3 check, or I'm not sure what else to play though. If she just goes back to G3, you know, Irina can now start. Yeah, actually, Queen G3 check is also an interesting point. Maybe she's considering that with the idea of snapping the pawn on H3 and seeing how that goes. But meanwhile, in Gadakemsky Lenderman.
And I was just actually going to a different game. I was going to the other co-leader, I think Varkobian, against Ray Robson. Ray Robson down a pawn, and Var is settling in very, very nicely.
Yes.
I think he's well on his way to, would this be his third win on the trot?
Third win in a row, 5 draws, starting with 4 draws and 3 wins.
Wow, very impressive. So what we see in this position is Black's minor pieces are coming alive. All of his pieces, in fact, are focused on this F4 square. So this is very nice. He's an extra pawn up, active queen. This bishop on G2 is a good defensive piece, but there's nothing on this diagonal. And so right now, I think that Var, he hasn't chalked up the point, don't get me wrong, but he's well on his way to winning this game. And
he's got all the trumps, the beautiful F4 square, the safe king, and the extra pawn.
Right.
So this is going to be a tough task for Ray to save.
Exactly. Moving on to our other co-leaders game in the open section, Gadakamsky has kept his extra pawn. We're going to go back. These moves were quickly played just before the time control, so a mixture of maybe second best and good moves. But basically what happened is Gada traded off his b5 pawn for Black's pawn on a3. At the moment, he's got a problem with his bishop, but let's see how Gada handled that. He brought his bishop back to f1. Always, this pawn on h6 is like this bone in your throat. You're trying to clear the situation for this black king, but this pawn on h6 is really an annoyance. Now, look at this. Gada's got an active rook. This is the first time in the game that his rook has actually been great. And